Well, folks, as I've been promising, our next guest, the Reverend Stephen, it's spelled like Stephen, but his name is Stephen Broden. He is a former Republican political candidate from the state of Texas in the 30th Congressional District for the U.S. House. He's also a pastor, a businessman, a political commentator, a former professor, and an activist for pro-life causes. He worked also as a newscaster and a disc jockey and a radio broadcaster. Now, Pastor Broden founded the Fair Park Bible Fellowship Church in 1987 and serves as its senior pastor. And I've got to tell you, I met this gentleman, this prince of a man, this prince of a brother in the Lord, out in Dallas, Texas several weeks ago. He, out of the graciousness of his own heart, invited me to preach on a Sunday morning in his church at the Fair Park Bible Fellowship Church. He has been pastoring there since 1987. He founded it then. That's the exact date in which I came to pastor my church. So he and I both have been senior pastors of our churches for 25 years. Now, I'm going to bring him on, but before I do, I'm going to ask Mallory, do you have that clip ready to go? I'm going to ask Mallory to play a clip, because back when Pastor Broden was running for Congress, he was on the Glenn Beck program, and he's been on Fox News and Glenn Beck several times, but I'm just going to play a 1-minute clip, and you're going to hear Glenn Beck talking about how pastors need to get off their rear ends and get involved in politics, and then he turns over to Pastor Broden. He asks him a question. You're going to hear a portion of Pastor Broden's answer, because I want you to hear him on Glenn Beck. I want you to hear how eloquent this man is, and then we'll go right to him live, and we're going to enjoy Pastor Stephen Broden for the next 30 minutes right here on Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. Go ahead and roll that clip, Mallory.
What should pastors in America listen to this? Because you have to ask your pastor to get off his butt if he's not doing it right now and make a choice, because there is one choice to make. You're either with the radicals and Saul Alinsky and collective redemption, or you're with the founders and their understanding of human individual rights, right?
Well, absolutely. When you talk about the founders, you cannot detach them from the Judeo-Christian ethic that undergirds everything that has made America great. And when you say Judeo-Christian ethic, you're talking about the Bible. And so pastors need to recast in the minds of their congregation that this nation was founded on principles that are sourced within the Word of God. When you talk about liberty, you cannot escape the liberty that is given to every man, because we are made in the image of God.
Pastor Stephen Broden on Glenn Beck, and now today on Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. Pastor Broden, God bless you. Thank you for being with us today.
I am humbled to be a part of your show.
Well, the humility goes the other way around. We're humbled to have you with us, and I've got to thank you again. I've done it personally and privately, but now publicly before tens of thousands of people. I've got to say to you, thank you for having me out in Dallas a few weeks ago to be at the Constitutional Election Summit, and thank you for the graciousness of having me preach to your precious people on a Sunday morning. And I'm just thrilled that you were able to come on and be with us today.
Well, I'm sure, like many Floridians know, you blessed our socks off, and we're still talking about it.
Oh, my goodness. God bless you for that. Well, listen, I've just got to ask you, Pastor Broden, I've got so many things I want to ask you, and I know you have things you want to talk about, so if I don't ask you the things you want to talk about, you just shift the conversation that way. But let me just start off with this. Since my part in the Constitutional Elections Conference was to speak of the Obama fraud, the Obama travesty, and you being a black pastor and being an activist for Christian causes and constitutional causes and right-to-life causes and putting yourself out there and running for office. I mean, you're an American. I mean, and you love the Constitution, and you love the Word of God, and you love God's people. And I was in your church, and you've got black folks, and you've got white folks, and you've got Hispanic folks. You're like me. You just love folks. But yet, when I try to speak to Obama's fraud and his constitutional travesties, the first thing I'm called is a racist. Are you ever called that? I mean, how do they deal with that when a black pastor speaks to the very same things I speak to?
Well, I'm certainly not called a racist, but I am called a sellout and an Uncle Tom and someone who is an Oreo cookie. But, names they call names because I think, by and large, and you and I talked about this before, that there's a great deception that's happening and is being perpetrated particularly on African Americans and in the church, the Christian church in particular, We have been warned by the Apostle Paul in Colossians chapter 2, verse 8, "See to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deception, according to the traditions of men and the elementary principles of the world, rather than of Jesus Christ." And what we're seeing is that in the church, in the black church in particular, there is an abandonment of our relationship with God and to embrace the flesh, that is Barack Obama.
Yeah. And are you finding that in the black church that they're having a difficult time dealing with, and I guess you just answered this question, but I was listening to what you were saying, and I was thinking about how do the primarily black churches, how do they deal with this dichotomy of, okay, you've got a man, listen, the first couple of days he was in office, I mean, I was proud for our country, that our country was beyond the racism thing, and we've elected a president, a black president. I mean, yay for the USA. But, I mean, it didn't take me but a couple days to get over that once I heard him start speaking, and I realized...
Well, look, I never was for him. I campaigned against him. I spoke out against what he was about, and his principles and his worldview. They were not mine. They were not consistent with the Christian worldview, so I was never on board.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as you well know, is that the Bible talks about a deluding spirit.
Yes.
That will go out and will deceive perhaps even the elect. And so I think we're living right in the middle of that right now.
Yes.
And that what we're seeing is that people are being seduced by doctrines of men and being encouraged to walk away from their faith connection with God. Now, listen, even right now, today, as we are facing the redefinition of marriage, that the church has not responded in a way that would establish an alternative that will speak to the culture that this is not from God, that it does not reflect our worldview. We do not see that happening, not in the black church or in the white church for that matter.
Right.
It just isn't happening. So I think in large part it's because there is this deception, there is this hammer that they are hammering on us called political correctness, and we have capitulated to political correctness and abdicated on BC, biblical correctness, and Lord knows CC, constitutional correctness, is under the bus.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, it's one biblical travesty after another, one constitutional travesty after. We know the constitutional travesties. We make lists of them, and now look at the biblical travesties that are unfolding before our eye. The celebration, the open celebration of sodomy in the military and in the White House. Just 1 week ago today, the first ever gay pride celebration in the White House. He brings in a group of gays from Philadelphia. They get their pictures taken, giving the finger to Ronald Reagan and other presidents, and they desecrate the White House by dancing a jig while the Marine band is playing. And just making a mockery of the Word of God and the United States of America and the institution of the family. And now the U.S. military is being used to celebrate sodomy. Do you see any biblical overtones in that, Pastor?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, the desecration that was taking place in the White House, although it was physically being demonstrated by those homosexuals, the desecration actually was at the feet of the president, where he invited them in and allowed them to participate in that kind of debauchery in front of our nation. He is sending a message to us.
Yes.
And we must receive that. We must understand what it is that we're facing in this administration. We're facing an administration who announced to us before he took office that he was ready to fundamentally change America.
That's right.
I think we understand what that is now, and I think it's incumbent upon us as stewards of this liberty that God has given to us, these unalienable rights that have been given to us by God. It is our stewardship responsibility to challenge this behavior, to challenge his actions, to challenge his worldview, and to do it in a way that we send a message clearly across his bow that we will not tolerate, we will not stand for this kind of debauchery.
Right. Very, very well spoken. And God bless you for your biblical analysis of this. And that's one reason I love you so much, because you are not ashamed to declare the truth of the Word of God, particularly as it relates to geopolitical events and political events right here in our nation. Listen, I tell you what, Reverend Broden, we're going to take a brief time out, and I'm going to ask you to, of course, you're going to be on the line. I want to talk to you off air. But when we come back, we're going to jump more back into this, and I've got some more questions for you. So, folks, listen, you're listening to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. Reverend Stephen Broden with us out of Dallas, Texas. I know that you've already been electrified by him just Just hang on. It's going to get better. We'll be right back.